Welcome to our MJA podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. My name is Mark, and I am your host for tonight's podcast. This is episode 17, part 1. Tonight's episode is about solved homicides of 3 females who were an American actress, and then there will be 4 solved homicide cases of just everyday people. Solved homicide cases. Case 1. Actress Margaret Campbell, born April 24th, 1883, died June 27th, 1939. She died at the age of 56 years old in Los Angeles, California. Campbell was an American character actress in silent films. It was reported on June 27, 1939, Campbell was sexually assaulted and bludgeoned to death with a hammer by her son, Campbell McDonald. He is also suspected of having bludgeoned to death a Russian dancer, as well as having assaulted the young actress Delia Bogart, who survived. He was later cleared of those attacks when the actual murderer, DeWitt Clinton Cook, was captured by the Los Angeles police force. Both attacks occurred on Los Angeles City College campus. Case 2. Actress Rhea Mitchell, born December 10th, 1890, died October 16th, 1957, at the age of 66 years old in Los Angeles, California. Cause of death, homicide by strangulation. Mitchell was an American film actress and screenwriter. Mitchell began her career during the silent films and appeared in over 100 films. Her death. After Mitchell retired from films, she managed a large apartment house in Los Angeles. While managing a second apartment in 1957, a disgruntled tenant named Sonny Hartford Jr. strangled her with the cord of her blue silk dressing gown. Police said there was no sign of struggle or criminal attack. Her body was discovered by the houseboy. The actress was known as Ginger to her friends. Case 3. An American news anchor. Ann Presley, born August 28, 1982, died October 25, 2008, at the age of 26 years old in Little Rock, Arkansas. Ann was an American news anchor for KATV Channel 7 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Ann Presley was found on October 20, 2008, which was a half hour before she was due to appear on the station's Daybreak program. Little Rock police was alerted by Ann's mother, Patricia, when Presley did not answer her wake-up call. The mother, Patricia, found Presley unresponsive in her bed with injuries sustained to her head and upper body. It looked like she had took a beating. At the hospital, it was determined that Ann had been raped. Her left hand had been broken, and her face had been crushed beyond recognition. The attacker took her laptop computer, her handbag with a credit card, and little else. On November 26, 2008, police in Little Rock arrested Curtis Vance for the murder of Presley. On November 11, 2009, Vance was convicted of capital murder residential burglary, rape, and theft of property. Vance was reportedly a fan of Presley's and was a frequent viewer of her morning news shows. The following day, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The Arkansas Supreme Court rejected Vance's appeal on June 2, 2011. Vance was also charged with the rape of Kristen Edwards on April 21, 2008 at her home. We are going to take a pause for the cause, and when we come back to our podcast, we will present 4 cases of solved homicides of everyday people. MJA Inc Investigations Public Service Announcement. Missing children. Morgan Nick. The 6-year-old white female went missing on June 9, 1995 from Alma, Arkansas, located in Crawford County. At 10:45 p.m. on June 9, 1995 in Alma, Arkansas, 6-year-old Morgan Nick was abducted from a Little League ball game by an unidentified man. Witnesses observed a man watching Morgan as she was playing with other children at the park. The witnesses also saw a red Ford pickup truck with a white camper parked nearby that disappeared at the same time as Morgan. Missing. Anna Waters. The 5-year-old white female went missing on January 16, 1973, from Half Moon Bay, California, located in San Mateo County. Ann Waters was last seen playing in her family's backyard in San Mateo County, California on June 16, 1973. In the beginning of the investigation, it was theorized that the 5-year-old female had fallen into the creek located near the family's home and drowned. The area around the creek and the waters was searched, but no trace of Anna was found. Missing. Amanda Victoria Brown. The 7-year-old white female went missing on September 11, 1998 from Tampa, Florida. Willie Crane Jr., a local convicted child molester, was Amanda's mother's boyfriend at the time. Craig's residence was searched after Brown vanished and authorities discovered blood inside his bathroom. The blood matched Brown's DNA and Crane was charged with her murder. Crane denied the charges but was found guilty in 1999 and sentenced to death. For weeks, investigators searched the waters off of Courtney Campbell Causeway where Crane took his boat, but Amanda's body was never found. That's the end of our MJA Inc Investigations public announcement. Welcome back to our MJA podcast, episode 17, part 1, Solved Homicides, case 4, Solved Homicides of Everyday People. The 2001 death of 31-year-old Pamela Shelley solved through a guilty plea. Pamela Shelley died on her way to the hospital on January 6, 2001, after she was found with a gunshot wound to the head in the Texas home that she shared with her boyfriend. Shelley had just split up with her husband and moved her 2 children from Arkansas to Texas into the home of Ronnie Jo Hendrick, who was an old family friend. Investigators initially ruled her death a suicide, but the case was reopened 7 years later because of an investigator, Carl Bowen. Bowen, who had been on patrol and responded to the initial incident. Bowen never felt quite right about the suicide ruling, and enough evidence was eventually gathered to indict Hendrick in October 2012, and with a trial set for September 2013. The DeWitt County District Attorney presented the case to the grand jury. New evidence uncovered during the investigation made the indictment and arrest possible. A mistrial occurred, but Hendrick instead pleaded guilty to a charge of murder, and he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Case 5. Lucille Johnson was murdered when she was 78 years old. This cold case was solved through Lego toy blocks, which went unexamined in the slaying of the elderly woman that eventually led police to her killer 26 years later. 78-year-old Lucille Johnson was strangled and beaten to death in her Salt Lake City home on February 2, 1991. The murder has been unsolved for the last 23 years. The case was reopened. The state crime lab made a breakthrough with DNA found on some of the Lego toys taken as evidence from the house in 1991. The DNA on the toys linked them to 47-year-old John Sansing, a convicted murderer. Fingerprints on the toys matched that of Sansing's juvenile son. Police believe the boy was playing with the Lego in the house when Sansing killed Mrs. Johnson. Detectives also submitted scrapings from under Johnson's fingernails to scan for DNA, with investigators matching the DNA profile to Sansing. Sansing, who had been charged with capital murder in Utah for Mrs. Johnson's death, is now being looked at for other unsolved murders in the state between 1989 and 1991. Sansing is currently on death row in Arizona for a murder of a church worker who was delivering charity food package to his family. Case 6. April Gregory was murdered on May 24, 1996, and was found on May 25, 1996. She was murdered at 19 years old. The case has been solved. April Gregory was a student at Syracuse University when she vanished in the very late night of May 24, 1996. The 19-year-old had just said goodbye to her brother, who dropped her off when she left him to head to her room and she vanished. Police believe she was abducted sometime between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m. Their only clue was April's work uniform was missing. On the same day, at around the same time, college student Kristen Smart also vanished from her college campus in California. April's boyfriend, Terrence Evans, was arrested for killing her and hiding her body. In 1997, Evans was indicted that he pushed Gregory by accident. Evans put April into her bed and gave her medication. When Evans woke up the next morning, April Gregory was dead. Evans attempted to destroy the body by setting it on fire in his garage. He put out the fire because of the smoke and the stench it created and tried to cover up the odor with perfume. Terrence Evans was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Case 7. Bonnie Craig was 18 years old when she was murdered in Anchorage, Alaska on September 28, 1994. The 18-year-old Bonnie Craig was a well-liked college freshman who arrived at a bus stop early in the morning of September 28, 1994. The 18-year-old was heading to an English class at the University of Alaska in Anchorage and then disappeared. Bonnie Craig's body was found floating in a creek later that day. Alaska state troopers believe she had died in a hiking accident. Karen Foster, who is Bonnie Craig's mother, found evidence that the 18-year-old Bonnie might have been murdered. The case was turned into a murder investigation when it was determined that the 18-year-old female had been sexually assaulted. There seemed to be no reason for her death, but many people believe it might have had something to do with Karen's undercover work with the local police. An informant told her that Bonnie may have been murdered by drug dealers with whom her undercover work was involved. The homicide case was solved. In 2008, Kenneth Dion, discharged from the Army at Fort Richardson, was about to be released from the New Hampshire prison system on an armed robbery charge when they ran his DNA in CODIS, the National DNA Database. Dion was charged with raping and murdering Bonnie Craig after his DNA matched the DNA on Bonnie on November 30th, 2006. Dion was finally found guilty on June 15, 2011, and was sentenced to 124 years in prison on October 31st, 2011. That's the end of tonight's podcast about solved homicides. Always remember, folks, if you ever get bored with nothing to do, take a walk into the woods. You might be surprised what you might find. My name is Mark. I was your host for tonight's podcast. I have a quote: "Nothing happens until something moves." Einstein. Thanks to all of our listeners, and good night from Plattsburgh, New York.